Hello YouTube and welcome to GrunfWorks. This is episode 89 of the Interplanetary Voyage of Exploration. And in previous episodes we were focusing on launching Impactors, and in this episode we will be launching the second Impactor carrier and deploying two more Impactor probes on top of Laythe. Hopefully learning from our past mistakes, because if you watch the previous episode, we didn't really have that much luck when it comes to deploying. The first one never made it even to the orbit, while the second one, okay, granted it was considered a success, but it ended up in the Sagan Sea. So yeah, it did return some science and I'm pretty happy with the amount returned. However, I would really like for the second probe to actually be receiving the science data from not the Sagan Sea again, but rather land. And given the landmass on Laythe is pretty scarce, we have to really step it up in terms of aiming. So hopefully, I'm kind of hoping that we would be able to hit land with at least one of those two satellites, and right now I'm just focusing on actually correctly lining up the deployer probe and making sure that we have connectivity with all the others, with both relay stations. So one of them would be this science station, and the other relay would definitely be the communications comsat, which is actually to be found in the higher orbit. So burning slightly orbit retrograde to lower our periapsis, because we definitely want to get out of the physics range of this initial probe, both from the reasons of getting to a lower orbit, easier deployment, and also for the reasons of me getting a decent frame rate, which would be then now somewhere around 11. By the way, I'm also flipping back and forth because I really wanted to also plan for some future transfer windows, and mainly to Sarnus and Urlum and others, because we have sent the probes and probes are en route, but they will arrive in long time. So I want to start preparing and see if it's feasible or at all doable to maybe do a manned mission there. So spending some of our hard-earned science points on the upgrades in terms of building speed, we also do want to actually start building something big. And if you have watched the episode of Kerbal Engineering, the 2000 special, then especially episodes 1 and 2, you know what we will be building. We will be building a huge interplanetary vessel, the Colonizer, that is scheduled to launch to Duna. It should carry the main component of the space station, the habitats, and also 2 SSTOs and some rovers. So the first part was the engine section, which we have just a little while ago launched, and now comes the main ship section, which I'm also scheduling to be built, and then I'm pressing load to actually get the third section, which would be the actual SSTO launcher. If you have missed this episode of the Kerbal Engineering, I highly suggest that you watch it, because there I'm showing in detail how to actually design this huge ship that will be assembled in orbit from scratch, and also how to repackage it into launchable components and do some even test launches. So in the context of the Interplanetary Voyage of Exploration, the only thing which remains is to actually build them. So, and this is exactly what I did. I scheduled them to be built, hopefully to be launched in 181 days altogether, and then assembled in orbit and launched to Duna. Okay, that was a short digression. Now, back to our Impactor launches. I am opening my remote tech antenna to make sure that I am connecting to both communication relays, the science station, and also the comms station. Those two are actually now my main target. So yeah, now I'm just trying to angle my orbit, so I will burn a little bit orbit normal to achieve an axial tilt and hopefully be able to orbit over some land masses, because equatorially there are not so many land masses. So I'm trying to actually see if we can align ourselves to get some sort of at least decent orbit to be able to target them. I am not using the trajectories mod. I'm well aware of its existence. I even tried to play this series with it, but it was giving even higher performance hits because it was the version of 0.90 and it was buggy, so it was crashing with one of my mods. I really don't recall which of the 60 and plus that I'm playing with, so yeah, you'll forgive me, I guess, in that terms. Okay, that being said, we are burning to lower our periapsis to some more manageable level. Okay, now that we have lowered our periapsis, we can actually take a look of what it looks like. Okay, and now I'm using the tech fuel balancer just to balance out our tanks, because as you saw there was a design flaw where the outer fuel lines from the outer tanks didn't go into the inner tanks, which causes the whole craft to be unstable. So I'm just now manually transferring some fuel between them, and we are lowering our periapsis from the 59 roughly to 59 by 90, because we want to be much closer at the point when we will be deploying, because there is a higher chance for us to be actually hitting the biomes that we want. So it is only fair that we execute the planned maneuver and lower our periapsis as expected. Okay, that brings us exactly where we want to be. And now we will play a little bit game of hit and miss and hopefully hit the continent. So doing 1 or 2 orbits until we actually get some nice alignment, because I wanted, after all, my relay station to have a good connectivity before I start sending commands. Once again, using the tech fuel balancer to balance out our fuel. Okay, a little bit back and forth with it, no matter. Okay, and now I'm toggling info because I want to make sure that my parachutes are set correctly for my impactor probes. It takes a little bit of fiddling, but then again, I think it's very well worth it. Okay, and yeah, we cannot fill it because we have connection error. None of our relays either has a connectivity or we don't see it. So yeah, as you can see, even with such advanced orbital networks, there are still communication gaps. Well, what can you do? I'm actually not sure that there should be any communication gaps, because I can clearly see the comms relays, so I'm thinking that it might even be some bug with the remote tech, but I guess we will have to see that as we go along. I might even go to the Space Center and just press reload, see what happens. Oh, and we have gotten... I guess the problem is us being in such a low orbit so that the signal is not within the direct line of sight. Okay, that being said, let us put a maneuver node to tighten the grip around Laythe and hopefully get a trajectory where we could actually do something. So okay, and this should lead to periapsis of 5,000, and periapsis of 5,000 I think is pretty much ideal because we would hopefully be flying over that continent that I'm seeing just beneath the clouds, and after that we should be popping up and hopefully being correctly aligned. So yeah. Okay. So this time I'm queuing a lot of commands like I did in the previous episode, but I'm hoping for a slightly better result this time. So just making sure that all of my commands are queued while I still have the signal. And okay, let us just do some time warping, and okay, let us oversee now the flight computer starting to execute these. I mean, despite the fact that I get, well, my stuff messes up more often than not when playing with such high signal delay, I still very much like playing with remote tech, and yeah, it just forces me to think further ahead, I guess. Okay, and starting to execute the planned maneuver. Bam. Perfect. So we have successfully lowered our periapsis to the 5,000 range, and now we should start to actually do other stuff. So I'm arming the parachute first. Note that I'm not deploying it, and then I'm pressing decouple. Perfect. So, bombs away. Oh, sorry, probes away. Okay, and after it detaches, I'm just hoping that we will actually now, in time, quickly turn orbit prograde and burn 80 meters per second, which was roughly the same, but with much lower thrust of 11%, in the hope that we can keep the space probe stable. So far, so good. Okay, and that should raise our apoapsis high, but the periapsis is over 60. Great. Beautiful view over, I think it was Tylo. And coming back to the Impactor probe, now let's just rename it Laythe Impactor 3, 3 times the charm. So let's us hope that it will actually end up on the continent. So let's see how it goes. We have still the connectivity. I'm making sure that it's holding orbit retrograde, that the landing gear is deployed, and the other communitron is activated within the next 30 minutes. I'm hoping by that time we would be long already landed. So, starting to execute and getting some science, which I'm happily sending back home to Kerman. I'm aware that it is only partial science, but then again, I never planned on landing on Laythe yet, so whichever amount of science we can dig up, it would be appreciated. And I was actually hoping for this landmass, and as you can see, it appears that we have clearly missed the point. So I'm getting slightly worried that we would actually overshoot it. Not the best scenario where you want to be in. And yes, so we overshot it, so now I'm pretty much hoping that there might be some landmass afterwards. Although I'm not really sure. So, passing the 25 kilometer mark, which signals the deployment of our drogue parachutes. And looks like this probe will also be landing at the Sagan Sea. Okay, that basically leaves us one more Impactor probe to try, so I'm still keeping my hopes up. Hoping that what we will do will actually make a difference. And yeah, now I'm just thinking about hitting a little bit the time acceleration, because after all, we are descending still at, well, decent rate, what was it, 50 meters per second, and I'm expecting that around 1000 meters my chutes will deploy, and then we will be going painfully slow down. Well, it's not a catastrophic failure, I guess, because we have successfully deployed yet another lander, and this time we have entered completely correct sequence, which I think playing with the remote tech is actually a huge success. But we have not really gone too far in terms of getting something new. Okay, 700, 600, so just waiting until our probe hits the deck, so to say, and just hitting that time acceleration, physics based as much as I can, to hopefully at least be able to just land this bad boy. Okay, and landed. Perfect. And we actually don't even care about the second antenna. So let us once again try and fly the last. Okay, just let's toggle the light, and I'm just checking if our communitrons and our signals are being correctly relayed by the other one, because that is something that I've noticed, which was maybe a problem previously, I wouldn't know. But yeah, comms DTS activate. Perfect. Okay, back to our yeah. So rather than going to our comms orbital, let us go now to our REM T kerman, which has been docked to the communications satellite in the higher orbit, but since we had a couple of failed landing attempts, we never managed to go further than just change sphere of influence. So I would really like for him to land at least one planetary body here in the Julian system. So we'll give it a look, see where we land up at, and yeah. So, but this station doesn't have enough fuel to refuel him correctly. So my goal is to go lower orbit and attach him to the science station, because that one has still that huge tank of fuel which we could reuse. And I know that when I detach the other two probes, I will probably mess up the bottom stage. So I actually want to go in and connect while those two probes are still attached, which kind of worries me a little because of how the craft looks like. Well, let's give it a look, shall we? Ram, I'm also concerned a little bit about your power generation, because you don't have the RTGs. It's not your own fault, it's my fault, but at least I would prefer not killing you. So let us go and dock with the other station. Okay, just making sure that we get out of this station's way, and this station will remain happily in the orbit around Laythe as a relay comms station. at least in its higher orbit. So I think we are descending from the orbit of 1200 down to the orbit of 400, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the idea, and just doing the standard rendezvous, what we have been doing many times so far. But still, it is always important to pay attention, because our delta V is decent, yet not stellar. So yeah, I was thinking originally of visiting Val, but I'm even thinking of doing a simulation. Maybe I'll pop Jeb in a lander and just have him see how much delta V it would take me to land on Val. I mean, Jeb needs to be in the simulator because he's the one who has the most experience regarding that. So, okay, proximity-based alarm. Let's just execute the maneuver. We are actually quite close, so maybe we could in theory burn for the station, but I guess I will prefer to actually go and do the maneuver properly. A couple of more orbits just to secure a perfect encounter. Yeah, somewhere along here. Come on, come on, come on. I think I'll have to just go with good enough. Okay. Yeah, let's just go and let us do the maneuver. Okay. Perfect. Just burn until... Yeah, and now let's see if we can manage to align something better. And yes, here we go. We have a good rendezvous. Perfect. This is what I was really hoping for. So I could actually align also the normal component, which I think was the problem as well. So, okay. Another alarm in terms of proximity for the maneuver node. 67 meters per second to burn. Not a whole lot. So coming up in few seconds and hitting the gas. Perfect. So let's see, and fiddling a little bit with RCS to get even closer encounter, which we did, which is awesome. Okay, so time to actually go for docking. 9 kilometers out. I know that we will be passing pretty close, so I'm kind of just now making sure to keep the yellow on the pink marker so that we don't waste too much fuel, that we come as close to the station as possible. 1000 meters, 750, and we are at roughly 11 meters per second, so I do want to keep my velocity in check as well. We don't want to be going too fast because after all we are going with nukes, and nukes are known to be pretty slow when it comes to reactions. So okay, coming ever so closer, 160 meters. I have turned on the docking alignment. This is, guys, by the way, I think 4 or 5 times acceleration because of the other ship, the orbital dock. So we are pretty much perfectly aligned, so it's just a matter of lateral thrusters to make sure that our approach is correct. And as you can see, those a little bit sharper-eyed among you will see that the probes are sticking from the two sides, which have the risk of hitting my chutes. So that's one thing that I'm actually pretty worried about, and that's why I've chose the high-angle camera to see if I can really first align and then start going towards it. And I don't know, but I think I'm actually one of the luckiest SOBs, because these RTGs will actually go in exactly the holes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is epic docking. I completely didn't expect this to happen. to be honest, I'm pretty stumped. Okay, now back to Space Center, and let us just focus on Val, because for us to do a Val landing simulation, we need first to get a height map, and our ScanSat probe has by now gathered all the data that we needed, and it is actually time that it transmits all this data back home to Kerbin. So, yes, let's just make sure that that data is actually sent. So I'm just now trying to get again a connection, and there we go. So now that I have a connection, I can actually send analyze data. And sending 120 science, which is a very nice and healthy chunk of science. Great, perfect. Okay, with that data being sent, Jeb will be actually able to execute the simulation. So I guess we're coming, guys, to the end of this episode. Please like if you like the episode, hit subscribe button for more KSP content that will be coming soon. Thank you again for watching. This is GrunfWorks signing off.